Right, so we had a field day that had different rotations, and we had community members that came out and participated and helped with different events. We even had some line dancing that was going on, and it was a lot of fun. We talked about being active and eating well, and one of the pictures you can see there's some football hurdles. And I tell you what, it's really interesting to see kindergartners and first graders run around those hurdles. But it's a pretty good program to have around. One thing we also celebrated was the 100th day of school. Basically, on the 100th day of school, we had everybody dress up like they were 100 years old, and pictures of our students dressing up as elders. And we also did fun activities in the classroom that were geared around the number 100. And we had they took a picture and they had to write a story of what it would be like when they're 100 years old. They had different math activities that were around 100. And there's a lot of counting activities, but it's really interesting to see how the upper grades worked around the number 100 on that day, these different problem-solving skills that they had. We also had a family literacy night prior to continuous learning, and it was during Read Across America Week, and our literacy night was celebrating cultures around the world. We had different centers where families would come in and they got to experience different types of things from around the world. So we had a dreidel game where students spin a dreidel and had to come up with different types of numbers. And in our library, we had them take a virtual field trip to different places around the world using an app called Nearpod. Gave a lot of parents experience using Nearpod before we actually had to use it for continuous learning. But we had a pretty decent turnout with that. Whenever you have pizza involved, that helps. And then right after our literacy night, we went on spring break, and then continuous learning happened. And I just really want to give a shout out to all my staff members for that time. They worked as a team, they grew, and they reached out, they helped each other, and their main goal was to support students and to help them thrive in a very different and difficult situation. And it was really interesting because it did start out a little bit rocky, but as it went on, teachers got more experience with it, students got more experience with it, and we learned and we modified. So the pictures that you see up there is from our iPad and packet distribution. We had 3 of them where we handed out materials to students, we handed out iPads, and then we also had a grab and go mills available for students, and I'm very impressed that the school district had that for our district, and it really helped out to the families that needed it, and it also gave us a chance to be able to see some of the students and check on during that time. One of my favorite pictures, though, is that one in the bottom right-hand corner is one of the students that was in a Zoom classroom meeting. They had it hooked up on a projector, so they wanted to see their classmates makes bigger, and that's the way to do it. For this school year, it's been very interesting. It was nice to come to school and have a plan, because we all knew school was going to look a little bit different. But I really appreciate there being a plan in place, and for staff members to being able to have time to get together and go through that plan and adjust it and modify. So there was some things that were a bit different. One thing I really appreciate is the Remind app. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from parents, but what's really interesting is Jenny Bark was actually using Remind the year before, and I was thinking, what, this is a good thing. I wonder what else it could do, and the district version of it is a lot better. But it's the tool that we use to communicate. The district uses to communicate with parents. I use it to communicate at the building level, and then my teachers have it at their individual classroom level to be able to communicate. So one of the great things we have going on this year, I feel, is communication being a lot better. So another deal is our water fountains district-wide were closed down, and we had to adjust and modify, and I wanted to give a big shout out to our PTO. They went and got water bottles for all of our students and staff, and it helps. Whenever you get thirsty and you're not able to go get a drink from the water fountain, well, we have water out in the hallway, and we can still get water for them. So For students that possibly don't have their water bottles, we have little cups available to them. And kids think it's pretty neat. They feel special being able to get those bottles. So one thing that was really neat is during the summer, Jenny Barker got brand new lights in the main building. And, you know, the lights that we had before, you know, you could tell that they had been there for a while. But they didn't really realize that they were old or needed replacement until we got our new ones. And these lights are really super neat. They're LED and they're really bright, but they also have a dimmer on them. So before I would see teachers go and put like different shades of cloth over their light, so that the light would be like a blue transparent color to make it more softer. And now students are able teachers are able to dim the lights and make it more suitable for students when they need to, or get the students' attention. But one of the fun things though was seeing the process of how the lights were taken out. So I wanted to share that. And then the picture in the middle is Miss Esl, our custodian, and I were practicing our social distancing and our face masks, and we had really cool face shields that we were trying out, and that was pretty neat. And then we were getting ready for our first day of in-services of having teachers come back. One thing you noticed is our lunch tables, we have them numbered to help us have students not only sit socially distanced apart, but also to be able to keep track of where kids are sitting. And it's really interesting that sometimes we all just need to have a little bit of space. You know, when students came back at the beginning of the school, they were so excited to be back in the building. They were so excited to see their friends. And it's interesting that, you know, they're following, you know, keeping their space, but we're also having less behavior issues because, you know, people are not getting each other's space as much. I think that's pretty interesting. One thing that's a bit different is when school started up, instead of having a normal open house or a traditional open house that we used to, we had a virtual open house, and we used Facebook as our platform, and it was fun to see how the teachers got on there and what kind of messages they had for their students. You know, and there's nothing like having the kids there in actual person, but it's also nice to have these videos to go back and look for. So the pictures that I have up on there are our classroom teachers for kindergarten through 6th grade, and they're pretty excited to get their kids back. And one thing I hadn't put a slide in for is we also had virtual parent-teacher conferences, and you know, it was a different platform for parents, and it's a bit different, and it's interesting to see how teachers adjust and modify for that, and how parents adjust and modify. For professional development, I thought that was pretty important to talk about. This school year is a lot different than any school year that I've been a part of in the last 15 years, along with my staff members. And one thing that my staff appreciates and that I appreciate is that at the beginning, right before school started, we were able to come together for 4 days and have time to look over our reopening plan and start to look at the material and come up with a plan to how we look at it at Jenny Barker, but also to help teachers to transition from the different levels. And, you know, when you start a school year and you have some uncertainties, you know, it's good to be able to deal a lot of that time to come together. But my teachers really appreciated having a couple weeks after that 4 days to be able to put that plan into place into their classroom and to prepare for the school year. To continue our professional developments, every month we have a day of professional development to collaborate, plan, and prepare. So basically, my instructional leadership team talks with teachers, my instructional coach. We find out what kind of needs teachers are experiencing, what kind of needs parents are experiencing, and we try and provide materials that'll help them get ready for that. And you know, part of that level, we started school at level 3, and then we moved to a more restricted level at level 4, and then we had to decide how that was different, what that looked like to make sure that staff members and the students were safe. And you know, while we were in level 4, then classroom colors started changing, going from green to yellow, and then seeing what kind of other bills we need to put in place to protect our students and to protect our staff. So having this collaboration time once a month to be able to come together as a building and see first staff meeting, we were able to meet in our gym and, do some more in person. Our last staff meeting that we had, or professional development that we had via Zoom, like we're doing now. And it was really interesting because, when you sit in Zoom and you think you're going to be there for a couple hours, you get kind of worried about it, but then when you get into it and you start sharing and you start talking and it starts turning into a class and you start collaborating, it's interesting to see how teachers adjust and modify and thrive. And I think that's an underlying theme that I've seen the last couple years since I've been a principal is, when you take a teacher and you take a student and you give them a new situation and you give them time to work on it and to perfect it, they thrive. And I appreciate my staff, but I appreciate my students, and I appreciate my parents working so hard together. And the fact that we're able to have conversations and grow from those conversations, it means a lot, especially the podcast. Some other professional developments that we have is we have grade band PLCs. So first and second will meet, third and fourth will meet, fifth and sixth will meet, and teachers will have a chance to collaborate and talk about what kind of needs they're seeing in the classrooms. And then our instructional coach, Mrs. Wright, she also does individual coaching meetings to personally see what teachers are needing. One of the big things that we've been working on and part of our building goal is our strategic planning. So said students went to continuous learning the end of the last school year. We still had lessons that were going on, and we still had education that was going on, but we know that some have fallen back a bit. And basically, when we're doing our professional developments, we're looking at our data, and then we're looking at the content that we're going to teach, and then we see what concepts that was being taught, or that were taught during the fourth quarter last year that we might need to address more before we jump into the next lesson or the next unit. So it's been good to have that time. And then we've also been working on technology integration, which is another one of our building goals, and that's being able to move into the level 5 and level 6 to where we get into the hybrid learning or the remote learning. And basically since the start of the school year, we've been working on giving our teachers the tools they need to be successful in that situation. And what's really interesting is seeing it turn around in the classroom and seeing how they're preparing students and preparing their classes for those other levels as well. And what kind of a presentation would it be if you couldn't see students in action? So I went around and we took some pictures from each classroom so you could see pretty much what the classrooms look like right now. I really think it's interesting how creative teachers get. Some classrooms want to make barriers between students, and you can get kind of creative with some PVC and some clear vinyl. First grade, they went and she made a used car lot of a bunch of Jeeps. I guess she's a really big Jeep fan, but what's really neat is those shields that are on those desks, they're Velcroed on there, and you can take them off and they turn into convertibles when we're not needed. So, the students appreciate that. Oops, sorry. And then, second grade, we got our desks socially distanced apart, facing the same direction. Third grade, there's a different type of dividers that were made. So it's just interesting to see how the classrooms adjust and modify. Fourth, fifth, and sixth, we're able to social distance and doing what we need to do to be successful. So I'm very proud of our students at Jenny Barker. I'm very proud of our teachers at Jenny Barker, and then also our parents. Some of the technology that we use in the classroom or at different levels are pretty much on board right now. Right now, the school district is Jenny Barker is one of the iPads K through 6. One of the ones that we've used a lot is Zoom. It's just really neat platforms that be able to have that video conferencing. Another app that we use is Shobi and Google Classroom. Those two are really the platforms that we use the most to be able to share content with students and content with families at home, and it's also turned into a bit of a communication device as well. One concern at the beginning of the year is that we were going too much on digital and weren't doing enough with paper and pencil. And, you know, we did have to get on there and learn how to use the apps, and it does take some time to do that. But it's really interesting to see how we're still able to use paper and pencil and upload stuff on the Shelby. And it's still good to see that going on. One app that's really super neat is our Nearpod app, and that's the one that allows us to do virtual tours of different places around the world. But it also has different types of PowerPoints that goes along with it that directs us to use iPads as we're on it. And kids really seem to enjoy that app. And then two apps that we use a lot also is Dreambox Learning, which is an adaptive app for math that teachers can go in there and assign lessons, and students can go in there and work. And depending on how the students do, it'll take them up a level or down a level to be able to address a need that they have. So it's another point of data for us to look at for teachers to be able to have another tool to help that visual that can be used during intervention time or immersion time, and also when the kids are at home. And then another adaptive app that we use is Fast Forward, which is a reading app that helps students to work on different aspects of reading. And then it also turns into an app called Reading System Plus, where students are able to record themselves as they read, and we get more data with that. So it's really interesting to see how technology has changed in use in classrooms, and how teachers are using them in the class, and how students are using them in class, but yet we still have traditional stuff that's going on. And then Remind, it's just a wonderful app to use for communication. I appreciate the district going and getting that for us to be able to use district-wide this year. Another cool aspect of this year is we have the Engage After School program, and basically they meet after school from 3:35 to 5:45. Students do 4 rotations of about 30 minutes. They work on math, reading, they do an enrichment, and they have a PE, physical activity time, and then they have snacks. And the goals of that program is to increase literacy and math skills, increase English proficiency, increase sense of community and belonging, increase self-regulatory behavior skills. And, you know, I have thrown in a couple pictures of some of their enrichment activities, and I just think it's really interesting how they use different materials to be able to instruct things. And if you give a child a chance to be creative, they can make some really neat, super cool things. This year we did do NFL Play 60, but it was completely different than what it did last year. PTO then got a mascot for us. It's pretty neat that, you know, the Chiefs happened to won the Super Bowl last year, and who knows what's going to happen this year. Can only hope, I guess. But we had a door decorating contest, and you know, kids were really excited about getting their pictures up on the doors. But we also did a spirit week to go along with that. So we had, you know, MVP Monday, where students would wear they could wear a jersey or their favorite team shirt. Teamwork Tuesday, Wake Up Refreshed Wednesday. You know, we talked about you know, getting the right amount of sleep. Thankful Thursday and Fitness Friday, and you know, we were able to have our field day like we had in the previous year, but we were still able to talk about that exercise for 60 minutes and then about the nutrition. This week we are doing a Red Ribbon Week. One school goal has to be bully and drug free. And what's really neat is, you know, last year we were able to have pastries with police, which we weren't able to do this year, but on Thursday, we're going to have Officer Troy Davis do a Zoom presentation for our school. So I'm really excited to see what that's going to look like. But he's going to give a tour of his police car. And then we're also going to have a Spirit Week this week for Red Ribbon. So we're pretty excited about that. Today was Wear Red, you know, to take a stand against drugs. And my red shirt have a Chiefs bowl on. You know. I'm not going to test my favorite team, but it's pretty nice. The kids really get more into it, it seems, when we have our Spirit Weeks. And, you know, kids were pretty excited to come to school today. You know, it was fun seeing them come off the bus with the big faces and the big smiles and just grinning ear to ear. And, you know, you would think that a mask would cover a smile, but, you know, you can see a smile in their eyes when they come in. So it's a great day to be a Bobcat, and we want to thank USD-457 for all your support, and you know, school board, thank you for
staff who are able to join us today. Any board members, any questions? Let me go to Jennifer and first, make sure she, and then Dana too. Jennifer, do you have any questions?
Nope, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Dana?
Nope, I don't have any questions. Thanks. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Mark?
I agree, great presentation, a lot of information. Jenny Barker is one of the K through 6 schools, and it makes it pretty special. I'm wondering, with all the development on the east side of town, is Jenny Barker maxed out as far as enrollment and class size? Have we had to force transfer anybody? What's that situation?
I'm gonna maybe let Matt tackle that. I would say close. Kind of depends by grade level probably, but Matt?
Yeah, it's really interesting because we'll see some classes that are close to limits, some that are at their limits, and then we have a classroom that is about half full. So it just really depends on the grade level. We're sitting at about 140 students at the moment. And I know I've seen classes, I've seen years where it's been up to about 155 or 160.
And then on that facility too, you've got that unit just to the south of the main building. Is that still used as a classroom, and it doesn't have any like restroom facilities or anything like that in it? Is that correct?
It doesn't have any restroom facilities in it.
Okay.
One side is used for our science class, and then our other side is our special education room / coaching.
Okay. Thank you.
Alex, do you have any questions?
Ma'am, great presentation, thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck with the rest of the year.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr.
Thank you for all you do for us.
Okay. Stephanie, any correspondence? No. With that, then we'll go to the consent agenda.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second? Mark?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Alex, second by Mark. Is there any discussion? Do you want to do the roll, Stephanie? Laura? Aye. Dana?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Then we'll go to, sorry, I'm waiting for like more, sorry. Then we'll go to discussion items and the literacy plan. Monica?
Yes, I'm here. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Literacy plan up there. Okay. Okay, well, we are just going to give you an update to our literacy plan. That's our intent is to do some minor updates every year. I have with me Sarah Gear, who's going to speak on behalf of early childhood, as well as Lana Ratliff, who's going to speak on behalf of the middle school section, and Jenny Duncan, who's going to speak on behalf of the high school. So I hope you guys noticed that right here where it says 1st through 12 literacy plan, that was a hyperlink to our literacy plan. So if you didn't notice that, you can click there and actually get to our literacy plan. You'll just notice we cleaned it up a little bit. The table of contents is clickable, so you can click to different parts of our literacy plan without having to scroll through all the pages. And right here, this 2019 and 20 served as an adoption year for our ELA textbook. So obviously we needed to review our literacy plan because of that. We needed to review best practices for teaching English language arts along with our EL students. Because the continuous learning that we're always doing, our literacy team, which is comprised of our instructional coaches, spend many hours reading, researching about best practices on behalf of reading, writing, English language learners, best practices. The LINK grant, this is our final year of that grant, but that has been helpful in allowing us to research, to provide some district resources, to utilize current practices, provide some professional development for us. As you notice on the bottom, I have the visible learning chart here. We continue to study Patty's research on best practice. Our district-wide, we've received the last at least 2, going on 3 years already. We've been studying Hattie's research and effect size, and everything that we do, we want to be in the zone of desired effect. So we take this research seriously as we provide instruction for our students. Some of these research-based practices are included here. I won't read them all. They haven't changed. I was just going to revisit those research practices. Some updates to our plan are just updating demographics, assessments when available, such as the CALPA and Bass Bridge, any district assessments. So you'll notice in our plan, all of our charts have been updated with the most current data that we have. We also updated the appendix to update or to show, to reflect our reading protocol and some updates that were made to that. We included our district assessment plan that was in the report. Those are the appendix. I'll let Sarah talk to some updates that Garfield made.
Hey everybody, we just have a couple things on here for Garfield. First one was our next for learning curriculum that we adopted last year. It is specifically designed for early childhood, and we absolutely love it. Last year, we moved through it, only missed a couple of weeks in the last that last unit, but we really enjoyed having it. It integrates all of our standards. So if you walk into a classroom, there's a good chance you will be able to know what subject we're teaching. And if you know anything about early childhood, that's a really good thing. So we really appreciate the ability to adopt that. ASQ, we're plugging along with ASQ. We were allowed to go to able to go to some training last year, and we had made some plans to bring parents in and help them out a little bit more with the ASQ this year. Unfortunately, that didn't go quite as planned with all the restrictions, but we still feel like we've got quite a few of our families who love the ASQ, and our teachers are using that information in the classroom.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Sarah, I'm sorry. Can you just tell people who are watching what ASQ is?
ASQ is the Ages and Stages questionnaire. It's required by the state for all kindergarten and students. It is a questionnaire that basically just gives us information from the parents on the developmental stages of our students.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Since it hadn't been introduced, I just wanted to have that explanation. Thank you.
Our next one on there is dual language classroom. Through the LINK grant and through some research that Monica did, we added a classroom that is taught in both English and Spanish, and we feel like it's been very successful with our kiddos. So we've enjoyed having that. And then just our, of course, continued MTSS stuff with our, pretty much like all the rest of the schools. And tax bridge, we also are giving that, to our students along with the rest of the district. And, it's a good information again for our teachers to have.
All right, thanks, Sarah. I'll speak on the K-5 update. Kindergarten through 5th grade adopted benchmark advanced curriculum. So year 1 was last year, and lots of positive feedback on that, lots of digital components to that that have been beneficial for instruction through remote learning. We had to update Average assessment as well. Our past plan included Ames Web. We continued MTSS with that model, along with some state updates. So many of the coaches went to an MTSS conference last year and were able to get some updates. So we wanted to make sure our plan reflected that. We added a fast forward intervention. Matt mentioned that earlier in his presentation. So district-wide, we offer a reading intervention called Fast Forward. Again, ASQ includes kindergarten, so that's a state requirement. So we're working hard to make sure all of our parents and students are participating in that assessment, and we're utilizing the data from that in our classrooms. We made just some updates to the appendix, added some resources from Benchmark, and for example, they provide vocabulary routines that were different in Hood Mifflin, our other reading curriculum we had before. So we made sure that update was reflected as well. 6th through 8th grade, we have Lana.
Hi, everybody. Gosh, since the first draft of this to this update, there's been a lot of changes in middle school language instruction, and they've been great changes, I think. Before, we didn't really have a set curriculum that teachers were following. Now we have the new Pearson, and it's adapted now. It's been sold, so it's now called Swift Sabbath. But it's consistent across 6th through 8th grade. Our teachers have done a great job of collaborating, not only in our own buildings, but across the building. So the communication, I know, between Forrest Good and Kenneth Henderson has been phenomenal, working together to make things as consistent and as closely paced as we can make it between the two buildings. It's been really a great thing for the kids in Garden City. Along with that adoption then, we also were able to update our Systems 44 and Read 180 classes materials, and those are up and running really well. We've had some changes in staff in the Read 180 program in our building, but they've done such a great job at hitting more kids that need intervention. We've been really working on pulling that in, and we're starting to be able to target more kids with help, just with how we've adapted the system to fit the building, so it's really good. We adopted last year the Islet curriculum for the ESL kids and the newcomer classrooms, and I think this is, for me, one of the most exciting pieces for our ESL kids, because it's an online platform, but it allows the kids to read independently. It has a vast library available to all of our kids in those classes that is highly engaging for their age level, but it also can put it down to a simpler reading level for those kids that are practicing English as a second language, as their second language development. So it's been a really good addition as well. We continue to use FastBridge now to monitor our kids, help with identifying kids that might have vocabulary, comprehension, fluency, all types of different needs in their learning, and it's really helped. I know last year we had one 7th grade teacher that had, we noticed a whole comprehension. So being able to identify that need, she went into some really intensive vocabulary development with those groups of kids, and by the next testing days, they didn't indicate that they needed it anymore. So it was just a good example of how sometimes FastBridge can key us in on some overall things that we need to work on, not only for individual kids, but even for whole classroom instruction. So it was really a neat piece. We don't use the fast forward as much in the middle school. I think Henderson uses it a little more than we do. Just our numbers were so big and things that just, it's not one that we use as much, but we have used it some with our newcomer DSL program kids until we got the Islet. But another thing that I did want to mention too is with the new Pearson adoption, we've also been able to now start giving common assessments among our middle school kids. This is the first year we've done it, and it went over really well. We got our first unit under our belt about a week ago, and the teachers really found it to be helpful. And it was a really good gauge of what the kids learned in their first unit, from the growth and things that they saw in it. So there's some good data that's going to come out of that, and it's a very consistent way to look at all of our middle school kids using the same gauge again. So it gives us another piece of data that we can use when we need to triangulate or do data. It's another good piece that we have in place in the district now. So we're excited about that too.
Thank you, Lana. We have some high school updates that Jenny will share with us.
Hey, and then I have a couple things that actually aren't on there too that I kind of remembered today that were in the plan. So the Springboard English curriculum, this is our second year with the new textbooks that teachers are using, and last year they started working on really pacing out their units and working on making sure they were hitting those essential things. And so this year they're kind of refining and adjusting that. They're also working on creating their common assessments. They're actually using, in the Springboard curriculum that they have, there's what's called embedded assessments, and so which means they're kind of assessing students along the way. And they're pulling out specific things that they want to use as their common assessments from that. So they're working on doing that this year, which is kind of exciting. For FastBridge, we are also, I think Lana said it all with that. So we're also using FastBridge with the A-reading as kind of like a flag for any comprehension or vocabulary issues that we're seeing. Something that's not on there, this year we started last year, but also this year we added ACT Aspire in 9th grade last year, and then we added our 10th grade this year. We were going to do that in the spring, but you know how things happen. So ACT Aspire is been given, and that is a science, math, English, and reading assessment that our students take 3 times a year so that we can have some really good data with them. The updated Read 180 and System 44, this is Monica said our 3rd year using the new updated system. We mainly use that for our ESL, additional ESL support. And then something else that was in our plan that I remembered is that we actually are using Avid strategies school-wide, and they're all very literacy focused. So reading and writing especially, and a couple weeks ago when we were talking to PLCs, every single teacher had writing strategies to share that they were using across all content areas, every single content area, which is kind of exciting. So that's something else that came up. In addition to that, going back to the Springboard curriculum, speaking of Avid, the teachers are discovering that everything that we've been doing with Avid strategies and our Springboard English curriculum all line up together. So it's just kind of neat to see all the cohesive alignment. I think that's it.
Thank you, Jenny. We have some ESL updates as well. Voice was in the original plan. We just did some updates to the graphics, and I attached that here. We talked about Islet. That was a new curriculum adoption for 5th through 8th grade newcomer and the ESL classroom. At the elementary school, it's called World of Wonder. So that's the newcomer curriculum that they're utilizing.
Shannon, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Dana?
Yeah, I have a question. It seems like, all of the plan and all the, new things that we have are awesome in terms of, catching students that might need intervention or giving them the added support. I wonder, with some of these tests or different things that we have, are we able to catch students who actually excel in in ELA and are able to work with those students to give them more challenge? I know we have honors, opportunities in high school, but how about for those kids that are in maybe 6 through 8?
We began kind of exploring the option for maybe some honors ELA classes in the middle school last year. As a matter of fact, that kind of goes right hand in hand with the board goal for the AVID program too, because that is one of the criteria that we need to have for our kids, to be able to be considered a school-wide AVID program. So that's something that we need to continue to work on. It was something that we kind of still need to figure out how that will work in the middle school. We don't want to have that become where we have kids all in the same classes all day long, things like that. There's just a lot of things to consider in that, but yes, I think that's something we need to look at. As far as challenging kids, the new curriculum, the level of rigor and the things that it demands are a lot higher than what we had before. And so last year, the program in and of itself was just a lot more intense and a lot more, it was just a lot more rigorous for the kids. So they had to learn to get used to that too. So that was a big challenge for a lot of them last year. There are performance assessments, there are tasks and things like that that kids can take as far as they want to. So, if you have a child that excels in something, they can sure take it and run with it, that type of thing. But exactly having courses and things that are just set for the kids, we don't have that right now. Something we do need to work on.
Thank you.
Dana, do you have follow-up on that?
No, and I do recall when you did that presentation talking about the increased rigor with the new curriculum, which is great. I'm sure it's been a challenge with the changes that, when we went to online. I just don't want that to fall through the cracks. I think it's really important, especially in that middle school time. I think in that area, we need to do some work in it. So I'm glad to hear that it's still something being, thought about and considered, and hopefully we'll come up with something. Thanks.
I agree with you on that totally. It is nice because of the curriculum to have more of the project-based learning things and some of the ideas that kids can expand on in their own way does play into a lot of that, to where kids can take it as far as they want it to go. We do struggle a little bit with the time frame, having enough time for kids to really dig in and work hard. For us to get through all 5 units, it's pretty full, but there is opportunity for that too as well. So it's just something we're going to continue to work on and continue to educate teachers on the best way to do that.
Mark or Alex?
No question. Yeah, what's under the AVID, what's the weak core skills, what's that acronym stand for?
Go ahead, do that one. WICR, it stands for the different areas of instructional strategy. So W stands for writing, I is for inquiry, C is for collaboration, O is for organization, and R is for reading.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, ladies, for updating us on that. I really appreciate it. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That takes us to post-secondary success with Mr. Nordby and Mr. Mr. Feldes.
All right, I'll start. Good evening. I'm going to go ahead and attempt to share my screen here so you can see the presentation that we've got. All right, can everybody see that okay? All right, thank you. Well, we've made this presentation each of the last few years. Not a ton has changed, but there are some new things to kind of update you on. This is the first of our presentations that you're going to see this year concerning items that relate to our district accreditation through TISA. As you know, there are 5 sets of data that each district is charged with tracking in the TISA process. Social emotional factors measured locally, kindergarten readiness, and then 3 of them that directly affect 7-12 building. Individual plans of study, high school graduation, and post-secondary success. So post-secondary success is the first of those 3 that we'll be presenting on. The KSDE post-secondary success number is kind of a rigid and a little narrow for my liking, I guess, way of measuring things. It's hard to determine in a quick glance what is a successful high school graduate. But as KSDE and our state board envision it, a measure of a successful graduate is done this way. It's calculated by taking the graduation rate, multiplying it by what they call a success average, and then we get each district what they say is their effective rate. This is the data for the whole state of Kansas. To say in this formula that a student is a successful high school graduate, they have to meet 4 criteria. First, they can earn an industry recognized certification while they're in high school. And we have a number of those that we offer to kids. Secondly, they can earn a post-secondary certificate. As they leave high school, go to a college, go to a trade school, go to a tech school, get a certificate, they can become a success there. Earn a post-secondary degree, like get your associate's degree, perhaps. And enrolled in post-secondary for the first and second year following the high school graduation. Now, any of these 4 gates that are made by a student or accomplished by a student in the first 2 years of graduating from high school qualifies them as a successful high school graduate. So this data lags 2 years. It will be interesting this year for us to see how COVID affects this rate in a couple of years. So we may have quite a few kids that have started on their journey, they've gone to college, but because of COVID have decided not to go back to college, to perhaps delay their post-secondary work for a short period of time, rather than travel and live in a dorm or live in a house somewhere away from town, away from home. So it's going to be really interesting to see in a couple of years what the impact has been. Some things, this doesn't take into account those students that do delay their graduation or their post-secondary work by a short period of time, or they go into the military. Those students are not counted here as successful high school graduates. So you can see here, here's the state of Kansas numbers with a 5-year graduation average around 86%, a success average in the mid-50s, giving an effective rate in the 40s. This is our district aggregate. A 5-year graduation average right around 80%. The success average is still right around 50% for 5 years over time, and the effective average is around 40. The state takes all the risk factors that a district has with their student body and in their community, and they kind of calculate an estimate of where a district might be and where they would anticipate that a district would be, and you can see that our rate is above what they say is a predicted effectiveness rate for our district. These are the numbers for Garden City High School. They look pretty close to what the state average is, a 5-year graduation average in the upper 80s, a success average in the 50s, and an effective average in the 40s over a 5-year period of time. Some things that we do to try to help our students become successful high school graduates with some of these certifications. We do offer the OSHA 10 certification through our vocational program, the CertSafe certification, AWS welding certification, Microsoft user certification. We've added this year a partnership with Garden City Community College, so our students can get carpentry certifications and work to become a master carpenter, and then a licensed carpenter in all different areas, and also a manicuring program through Garden City Community College. So our students can work with them to be licensed manicurists when they leave high school. And so it's an interesting opportunity. We offer 17 dual credit courses on our campus this year, and 3 that are on the Garden City Community College campus, the carpentry, the manicuring class, but also a new one in farm management. We've got kids working towards over 1,200 credit hours right now in Garden City High School. So that's pretty exciting. We think that if kids can have a successful start at post-secondary work, that they'll be more likely to continue. And so we think it's great that we're able to give them that opportunity to get started. We also try to offer as many different types of programs and things that as we can. We have great students, we have great faculty, we've got a great school system that contributes to this post-secondary success. We also have several different programs at Garden City High School that help students kind of find their place, that help students set a plan for the future, such as communities and schools, the Jobs for America's Graduates. We do several college planning conferences. October is College Application Month. Last week we had several days dedicated just to working with seniors on their college application, getting their foot in the door. Sometimes, especially with first-generation college students coming from families where no one's really taken that step before, doing things like applying for financial aid in a FAFSA, in a housing application, and just doing a college application can be a hurdle. So we try to we give support in that process. We have a dedicated employee from Garden City Community College who works in our career center and reaches out to students and does nothing but provide support for those students that are interested in moving on to some kind of post-secondary study. The Applied Kansas program that I mentioned has been great. We've been one of the leaders in the state of Kansas as far as how many different applications to colleges we've been able to have filled out over the last few years. And that all falls in line with our individualized plans of study. And that by the time they get to be seniors, students have an IPS on file, they have resumes, they've got cover letters, they've got educational options kind of mapped out. So our counselors are able to have individual senior conferences with students and parents and talk about not only getting ready to graduate, but then what's next. What comes next after high school? Do you have your plan set? What steps have you taken to kind of achieve your plan? So we've got a lot of different things that we have working, and I think it was Alex who asked the question. I probably could have answered your question there with this, our description of wicker skills that I'm going to give. A big part of this post-secondary focus that we have at the high school right now is the AVID program, targeting first-generation college students. The district really made a big investment last year, providing 2 days of professional development for all of our 7-12 teachers, and we're continuing that on this year. And and really emphasizing those wicker skills, which can go into the workplace, and can also, lead to success when a student gets to college, having the writing skills, the inquiry skills, the collaboration skills, organizational skills, reading skills. Those transfer everywhere, whether it's college, tech, the world of work. Wicker skills can follow a student all along.
Okay, so, to join in with Mr. Norby, kind of some of the things that we're doing at the, alternate education center. We have our data right there, and, like Mr. Norby said, it's all figured the same way for every school, but the 2-year lag is really a starting point for a lot of our staff here in our building as well as myself, because 2018 is the year before I was in the building. And so that it is what it is, and our graduation rate, as you can see there, was on the low end of the 5 years. And when we present in November, I will be able to share a much better number. We were 3 graduates away from doubling what we had 2 years ago in graduates. We had 56 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, and last year we had 109. So we're moving in the right direction, and here's a lot of the similar things that Mr. Norby talked about, the ways that we are expecting and looking for better numbers in our effectiveness rate moving forward. We also have JAG in our building. We have a new instructor that actually starts in 2 days. Our instructor for JAG left, put in their 2 weeks notice, and with JAG, it's not a contract. They can put in their 2 weeks notice and move, and we appreciate him for the years that he put in, but we're hoping that our new instructor gets back to the competencies, the 85 JAG competencies in those different areas that are listed, with a focus on what's at the very bottom there. The intent of JAG is project-based learning. Get kids moving around, get kids doing. Learning by doing is extremely important in our building. And unfortunately, that has been lacking a little bit in our JAG program. And so back to the competencies that can be taken into anything after high school. Skills that can be taken into the workforce, post-secondary education, pretty much anything. We also last year did lunch and learns, and we invited businesses and learning professionals from within our community to share about their profession, what it took to get to where they were in their careers, and mainly the intent of that was to spark interest. We had a list of different lunch and learns to do to finish last year as well as to go through this year, but currently because of the gathering limitations and the levels the levels of the COVID precautions that we have had to endure, lunch and learns currently are put on hold, but will start as soon as they are safely able to do so. And then the graduation conferences that we hold in the fall, one way that we decided as a staff to increase the students who are attending post-secondary schools and are seeking out those degrees and those college opportunities is we simply just talk about it. It's a topic of conversation in almost everything that we do. Our school counselor has graduation conferences in the fall. She meets with parents and students, and they do their graduation plans, their post-secondary plans, their individual plans of study, and then she follows that up, like Mr. Norby shared, with college application assistance, filling out the FAFSA assistance. A lot of the students in our building fall into that potentially first-time college student. so they need a lot of help, and we are making it a more directed effort to providing them with assistance. We have a good partnership with the community college here as well. Prior to COVID, we increased the number of admission counselors that actually visited our building when they were in the area. And again, we just simply make the post-secondary goals of our students more of a conversation. As you can see in the picture there, those are our students that are on pace to graduate this school year, and it's kind of hard to tell in the picture, but what is written above their name is what they have indicated in their individual plan of study, what their post-secondary goal is, or what their post-secondary plans are after they graduate and earn their diploma here from our school. And then our school counselor, Mrs. Johnson, has asked each student she's working on getting each student to sign it. You know, a little bit of ownership and kind of self-pride and self-direction in that whole process. We're improving the collaboration between staff, students, and parents, and again, we just try to talk about our post-secondary goals far more often than we used to. Mr. Norby also talked about the partnerships that they have had previously and have increased over the year, starting this year with the Garden City Community College. And as you can see there, and I just noticed the typo, sorry for that, it's actually CNA, not CAN, at Garden City Community College, but we are a part of that partnership too, but the one highlighted there is automotive, and I want to highlight that just briefly because in our partnership with Garden City Community College, what we agreed on for automotive, right now that is just an alternate education program and opportunity with the full intent of opening that up, possibly not even, definitely district-wide, so bringing in students from the high school, from Garden City High School to be able to take automotive next year, but big picture also possibly becoming a kind of a hub for an high school automotive program. Garden City Community College has indicated they've already been contacted by some other area high schools, wondering if an opportunity to attend automotive classes, potentially at our facility using some of these resources would ever be a possible thing. What you see there is the classroom side of our garage. We currently have 9 students enrolled in that class. We offer only one section of it right now, and what big picture again, what Garden City Community College would love to see, as would we, is that class being offered 3, potentially 4 times a day. Our students meet for 86 minutes per class period. They spend a little bit of time in depth, looking at things, working on things, and then they spend a lot of time in the actual garage. A little bit of the students in action on the next slide. And what the students get here, our primary focus is to increase that industry recognized certificate opportunity for our students. We have, like I said, we have 9 students that are currently in automotive, and what they will earn if they complete this program throughout the entire year is 10 college credit hours, so that gets them started on their potentially associate degree, post-secondary goals that they might have, but it also gives them the opportunity to take 2 industry recognized certification tests, basically 1 each semester. The first semester is the OSHA certification and a general automotive certification test, and then second semester it focuses on brakes, and they basically learn the ins and outs, and I'm not even going to try to use correct terminology because I am not an automotive person, but they will be able to take the ASE certification and walk right into a shop, a dealership, you know, here in town or in the community, else, you know, wherever, and be able to be gainfully employed, servicing cars, changing brakes, things like that. And hopefully over time, like Mr. Norby said, with the lag in data, hopefully in the next couple of years, we see a sharp increase in the alternate education center in the number of industry recognized certifications that our students are getting.
Okay, I think that's our presentation. If you have any questions.
Dana, I'll go to you first this time.
I think I asked this the last time that we had this presentation, but I'm gonna ask it again because I don't know if it was answered or maybe I forgot, but I'm really curious when we collect this data, if we also collect the demographics of the students who have post-secondary success. Do we collect any kind of data like that?
We don't collect it, we don't break down the data, like that directly and report it. I mean, it's pretty easy data, I think, for our counselors to be able to get, but once again, it's 2 years, the data, those kids, maybe college juniors by the time that we get that data. So it's not something that we just really directly, take a look at.
Probably both schools, I assume, okay.
Yeah.
And then, kind of with that, you know, we just heard the literacy plan, and we have a system in place that kind of flags students. And I know they have, is it career cruising, is it still called that, for the individual of study? So I just wonder, because we have so many students and obviously, you know, not a ton of counselors, is there something in that program that flags students and kind of directs them or, you know, gives them a realistic plan or, you know, highlights that for a counselor so that way they know maybe, you know, which students they should be talking to and directing?
There's nothing in the plan that, Zello is what we call it now, but it's essentially career cruising, it's just different vendor, you're right. They do interest inventories, they take a look at some of the things that are closely aligned to them, closely matched to them. But there isn't anything that really flags them, which is why those personal conferences with the counselors that they do, especially the senior conferences, are really important, where they're able to say, what is that plan that you have on file? What steps have you taken in your plan? What steps do you plan to take in your plan? And so we've got they used to be called graduation conferences, but they're probably a little more post-secondary conferences, post-secondary success conferences, where we're talking about a little more than just, do you have all your credits for graduation? They're talking about the next step, and they use the information from Zello to help do that.
Do you think like doing that senior year is early enough?
Yeah. Well, no, and the hope is that by taking Zello and doing it freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, the mentoring teacher is able to be the one that has a conversation with them about, well, you say your career goal is to be a doctor, but yet you haven't enrolled in a math class, you haven't enrolled in a science class, you know, take a look at your assessment scores, does that fit? And you say you want to be a doctor, well, what's your post-secondary plan? Have you talked about a college yet? Have you applied to anything? Those kinds of discussions. But you're right, you know, staffing-wise, it's hard to have the counselors doing those conversations each year with each kid, so we have to kind of rely on the mentoring process to do it.
And so those mentoring teachers are kind of given guidance or kind of, they know that that's okay. And, okay, sorry.
No, each week that we do something that goes along with career cruising, the mentors kind of get a guided not really a script, but kind of a pathway of, okay, here are the topics for this career cruising letter, our lesson. So we need to ask about this, we need to do this, and so we try as best we can to guide them through it.
Great, and I just wanted to say, and I know that, you know, your numbers, are smaller, so this probably allows you to do that, but I really love that visual that you put with the kids and what their plan is for post-secondary, Mr. Feldes. Like, I think that that's, really important, and I love that, you know, just the conversation. I think a lot of times that's what they say, like, just start the conversation, just as if that's where it's gonna be, you know, post-secondary, whether that's a certificate or what have you, so, that's really neat.
Thank you. And it allows for the teachers to kind of say, oh, hey, I started in the JUCO, and that bulletin board is literally right in we're a one hallway school, it is literally right in the middle. Everybody walks by it, you know, 3, 4, 5 times a day.
That's really cool. Thanks, guys.
Jennifer, do you have anything?
No, I don't have anything.
Mark?
Not really. Question on the choice to exit high school and go into the military. Nothing is tracked there, is that correct?
Yeah, the state does not track that as part of this metric, and I'm not sure why. Steve, do you know why?
I think that, there's some privacy things between the military, the federal government, and the state government that prevents them from tracking that. But, you know, I just know it was especially vivid for me this year in having a late graduation. Just how many kids that I really looked forward to seeing walk across the stage and shake their hands weren't able to walk because they were at basic training. I know they're going to be successful, productive graduates of Garden City High School, but they're not going to be calculated on this because they were at basic training, they were going to the military.
Steve, didn't you have one that had actually completed basic and was back and did get to walk?
Yes, we actually had one that we graduated so late, she left right as soon as school was out, did basic training and had returned. And we'd already given her diploma to her, that she had to have it to go to basic. And so she brought the diploma back so that we could give it to her again and she could walk across the stage, which was great. We were happy to do it, but yeah, that was one that I know she's going to be a successful person in our community. She's going to contribute, but she won't be counted as part of it.
Well, that whole served military, what I want to say, discipline and ethic and all the wonderful things that our programs with JROTC provides to our students. It seems kind of interesting that there is just no tracking of that in this discussion. I realize it's probably consistent across the state, and so statistically fine, it's sort of just what it is. But for our standpoint, there's a lot of success stories there, and we're proud of them. And so it's not like we're not proud of them just because in this particular process they're not being tracked. But I just don't, it seems awkward to leave them out.
Alex?
I concur.
No question.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thank you, Mr. Norby, thank you, Mr. Feldes, appreciate your time tonight. Keep up the
Thanks,
good work.
everybody. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you at the next board meeting, I think, to talk graduation rate. This is our time to be making those presentations every year.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we're up for the COVID plan report and update. Glenda, are you spearheading that one for us tonight?
Thought maybe we lost the connection to Lakin there for a minute.
I'm wondering. Glenda, you're muted, just so you know.
How's that?
That's much
Is that
better.
better?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So this is a short presentation, but we do have a few changes that we'd like to recommend for our plan tonight.
Again, each one of these will need to be voted on, please. So the first one is concept. The current language at level 4 is no large group activities, concerts, assemblies, family engagement nights. The high school plan allows for music events that are socially distanced with masks, and we want the classroom levels and the high school plan to match. So we are requesting a change in the classroom level that says at level 4, concerts may be held with required masks and social distancing, maximum 35% of location capacity depending on the ability to social distance. So that 35% would match what they're allowing at activities in the high school athletics plan. Then we would continue with no assemblies, family engagement nights at level 4, and there would be no changes at level 5. So this is just one change to allow concerts at level 4. Playground at level 4, in the elementary plan, the school playground is closed. What we would like to recommend is that the playground will be available on a classroom rotation basis. No yellow student positive status classrooms on the playground. We talked quite a bit about this with the elementary principals, and they already rotate the outside play space between the classrooms so that we don't cross-contaminate between classrooms. So, the third grade classroom has the playground, the second grade classroom has the field, the first grade classroom has the track, and then they alternate that each week. So it would be possible for the principal to manipulate that, alternating that without a classroom knowing that, hey, we had a yellow student in our classroom, so we didn't get to use the playground. We aren't going to count teachers, so I did notice in Matt's presentation earlier, it looked like there were some adults on the playground equipment that we're not going to allow the adults on the playground, whether they're yellow or not. So. The before and after school club, this again is level 4. You can tell, like I said at the beginning, we learn by doing, and we've been in level 4 now enough that we're seeing some things that we want to look at differently. So with this one, in level 4, clubs will not meet. In looking at our Engage After School program, we had to change some things to stay eligible for that grant. So we allowed the After School Engage program to continue with an understanding that was after school academic focused activities. And we want to expand that to other academic focused activities. So this would include things like the science wire or robotics, and those things can be happening at level 4 with masks and social distancing, as well as level 5 with only half of the students participating at level 5. That kind of takes care of itself. But we do want that language for both level 4 and level 5 for after school club. And those are the recommended changes.
Okay.
Madam President,
Question?
can I jump in here 1 second?
Please.
So, regarding the changes, the first one about concerts, I think it's important maybe to clarify a little bit. I think we've had kind of a discrepancy between different parts of our plan. And I know my perspective on the language that was in our main levels on concerts was really thinking about elementary music programs. If we were at level 4, and for those parents who have been part of that process before, we hack 200 to 300 parents in one of our elementary gyms and have a wonderful night of program with all of our elementary kids in the school. But that just would not seem to make much sense in the current climate that we're in with the COVID-19 virus. So I don't think that was ever intended to mean we didn't think our middle school or high school performing groups would perform, knowing that they have different venues. We've kind of thought that, although today's maybe not the right day to think about it, that outdoor events are a possibility when the weather cooperates and will allow that. And so this is, I think, just again another example where we found kind of an inconsistency, and it kind of took getting our plan up and in operation before we discovered this. So we still don't want to have 300 people packed in one of our elementary gyms, but we do think that if, maybe if we brought a class in at a time instead of the whole school, and socially distance people appropriately, there's still an opportunity to have a concert that way, or if we use a different venue that allows for social distancing. So that's kind of the background for recommending that change. So we have 3 changes that we would like to recommend, but we also have asked Colleen Dries, City County Health Director, and Dr. Lindsay Burns, I think, is connected via Zoom tonight. Mrs. Dries is here with us at the meeting. But we've also asked them to come tonight just to kind of give an update on the status of COVID in our community. We've worked closely with these ladies, not only in the development of our plan, but each week in meeting with them to review data about what's going on in our schools, what's going on in our community, and help make decisions about the level that we set for our schools. So we certainly appreciate the relationship that we have with them. I will tell you, I think we're not in the same place that we were in terms of virus, both in our schools and in our community in late August or early September when we started school. We're seeing some trends with increasing activity that are concerning for all of us. And so, part of that is, or that's one of the things that we really would like these 2 medical professionals to be able to share directly with the board, kind of their perspective on that for our community. So with that said, it's kind of your pleasure. Do you want to consider the changes first, or do you want to listen to the report from the county health people first? It's kind of your pleasure.
I think it'd be beneficial to hear the update first, before we consider that. I saw a nod from Dana, I think, thumbs up, nod, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so, Colleen, Dr. Burns, thank you both for taking time out today, I appreciate it. So,
Sure, so one of the things that I'll just kind of go over is,
I'm sorry,
Of course.
before we go too far,
Sure.
Jennifer and Dana, can you hear Colleen from the podium? Okay? Okay.
so one of the things that I was gonna go over, with you is to kind of talk about the data, of course, numbers, kind of give you a good perspective of what's going on in our community. One of the, pieces of data that we track is increase in cases, our percent positivity rates, but also the total number of positives per week. And so broken down the data over essentially 4 weeks. So if you look at our number of positives, our first set of data in a 7-day period of time, it took September 27th through October 3rd. Total number of positives we had in that week time was 137. Our percent positivity rate that week was 13%. We had seen an increase in admissions at the hospital as well. And then the next week, dates October 4th through the 10th, we had a total of 156 positives. Our positivity rate did increase to 17%, so a 4% increase. Our hospitalizations were consistent. The following week, October 11th through the 17th, our numbers made a drastic jump. Total positives for that week was 201. Our positivity rate was 23%. Our hospitalizations have averaged about 15, around 13 to 15 that week range. In my last set of data, October 18th through the 24th, our positivity rate jumped again. It went from 23% to 31%. And I have well over 200 positives in that case, in that date range, 10/18 through 10/24. But I still have several results pending, so I don't have final numbers for that date range. Another, and our hospitalizations are consistently between 15 and 20 total admissions at the hospital. If I look at our deaths in our community as well, we pretty consistently kept at 12 total deaths through the end of August. In the month of October, we have had 6 deaths that we have announced. Our first death was April 14th. I had 1 in April. 7 in May, 2 in June, and 2 in August. And we have had 6 in October. That is a preliminary of some of the data that I have. It is definitely getting concerning from our perspective, and just the numbers that we have seen, the amount of positive cases from each week, and the increasing deaths. The hospitalizations are also increasing. So from our medical perspective, of course, from the health department's perspective, we would really like to do everything in our power to help continue to promote proactive behaviors and cautionary items. Wash your hands, socially distance, and most importantly, wear a mask. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Burns to also talk.
Yeah, I'd like to summarize and give my analysis of this. I spent the last week as the primary COVID rounder at St. Francis Hospital, taking care of COVID patients in the ICU and on the wards. I was one of 3 just with my group. That's outside the intensivist, the other hospitalist group, outside of the other hospitals. We've had to expand, and hit our peak levels of active hospitalization for COVID in my hospital in Wichita, which is a transfer facility. Many days we weren't able to take any transfers. We're running at and over capacity. And that's not to Wichita, unique, or not unique to any regional hospital. When we talk about the hospitalization numbers here in Garden City, that's running well above what we can handle or sustain, okay? So what I'm trying to say is when we're talking about positivity, like coinciding, that is rampant disease transmission. And here's what it comes down to. Masks are essential. We know, we have science now, masks are essential. But my mask protects you and protects me. It does little to no good if half the people aren't wearing masks. It is inconsiderate to say the least, but it is endangering other people's health. And the people that I talked to, that I took care of in the hospital, their breath, and were moving to the ICU because they needed higher and higher levels of oxygen, said, I was wearing my mask and I just went to this, this place and these people weren't, and maybe that's where I got it, but I don't even know. We're seeing it outside of household spread now. We're seeing it so many places. It is essential for people to start taking really aggressive measures, mask wearing. But we need to really think about what our behavior patterns are. I really strongly urge you to consider and reconsider holding those concerts. I think we need to have a very, very real conversation about what winter sports looks like. And this isn't the only community that needs to have that conversation. That's what's going on across the state. And I will tell you, my peers, whether they're in advisory capacities or other, are making consistent recommendations to say, please consider. I know it's really hard to consider your senior missing a basketball season, but it's also really a life-changing thing to lose their parents. That happened to me when I was in high school. Let's think about what we're considering and what we're weighing here. And I am happy that so many people don't see the reality of this and aren't dealing with this and aren't seeing sick people or haven't been sick themselves. But please understand, we are in a bad situation and it is getting worse. And it's true. In August, our community, we looked at the data, we strong analysis, we tried to make a reasonable plan. Dr. Carlin is exactly correct when he says, we're not in the same scenario by any means. And we had a good run of it here trying to keep kids in school, and we've done the very best we can, and we've achieved more than a lot of districts. But I would ask that you consider these, to really consider what the risk is here, because you're making decisions that affect our entire community, our entire region. And when we talk about the AD call today, we talk about the interactions between communities as kids are traveling and trying to be responsible and think about what's going on in other communities and basically their risk coming to us, our risk to us. We have to start thinking about this as a whole society, a whole community taking care of one another. It is no longer acceptable for people to say, well, I'm going to do what I want and you do what you want. We can't. We won't survive doing that. We won't. So maybe I am coming off of not sleeping and having someone die on my service every single day and having to call family members telling them, over the phone because they weren't able to come in. Oh, they really decompensated and I'm sorry, now we've had to intubate them. Please, I hope that makes an impact. I hope that influences you to understand the risk that we're dealing with. For those folks who have a mild disease and recover, I am so thankful. I am so thankful. But we cannot predict who's going to get very ill, but what we are predicting is that a lot more people are getting ill. And unfortunately, we are heading into the season where we are going to deal with a lot of other illnesses too. Flu's out there, but there's lots of other pneumonias, respiratory diseases. We see so much, the highest census numbers that we encounter in the winter months in the hospital. So I'm pleading and begging, please, as a community, let's make some decisions that preserve us, that preserve what our ultimate goals are. If our ultimate goal is to keep kids in the classroom in the safest way we can, we have to get really serious about what our priorities are and what risks we're willing to take and what mitigation measures we are absolutely capable of. And it's so encouraging when we see so many people doing so much work. And you see those little kids, they're wearing their masks all day long, they're sitting behind barriers all day long. It takes one person walking into that classroom without a mask on, or one person sending their kid to school sick knowingly to negate all that effort and so many people working, so committed to trying to keep one another safe. So as you consider these, and these recommendations and these changes and more decisions to come, please, if I could make a personal plea of my experience, help me. Help us, help all of us. We can get through this together. We just have to start pulling as a unit. We have to act as a true community, and we can. And the structure is in place. We can make this work. We can make it work. It won't be ideal. We've always, it is the way it was before and the way it was last year, and we just have to get through this time in this current world state that we're experiencing to make it to the other side. So, thank you. I'm happy to take any questions. I'm happy to speak specifically to the data, but I can tell you the positivity rate that we're experiencing right now, it is rampant community spread, and we have got to throw the brakes on somehow.
One of the items that we just talked about as far as modification to the level 4 plan for the district was sort of recognizing, as I understand it, that maybe the virus is not lingering like we once feared on playground equipment outside. And so I guess just to start off with on that item, does that sound, does that meet the science or the observations? Is that reasonable, given the challenges that we have for kids to be able to get outside and to play, can we use the playground equipment? Is that a safe move? And I guess, I don't know who to throw that to. I know that, first of all, I want to recognize that the leadership in the district, with the vision team this last week, talked a lot about these items that we're considering. And so just taking one of them, that particular one, it seems to me, with my perspective, which is very limited, that makes a whole lot of sense. It certainly speaks to some pleas from teachers to be able to, like, it sounds like they're doing a very good job of manage the playground and the outside spaces in a safe way. But just from our criteria, that change to allow access to playground equipment under level 4, does that give our Finney County health experts any concern?
I think with the temperature drop, it's gonna be better for virus sticking around on surfaces. I think it's nearly impossible to disinfect playground equipment effectively. I think that children grouped together, like they're grouping together on slides or those kind of things, is difficult. I suppose that can be managed or mitigated. I do think it's really important for kids to get out and get air and get breaks. I completely concur with that. So I think, however, it can be done with some overarching principles of try not to have kids breathing and slobbering on each other. Try to limit numbers. Try and keep in cohorts. I think there's a really outstanding graphic that's been shared amongst professionals that I work with, and especially pediatricians, as we talk about disease prevention this year. The Swiss cheese model translated to COVID prevention. Every slice of the cheese, whether it's hand washing, sanitation, mask wearing, social distancing, lines up the whole differently. So if you can prevent that virus from getting through with another maker, you've got so much more protection than if you have 2 slices, you have 6, okay? So in the risk pool of having kids running around in the gym together versus running around outside and touching playground equipment, you know, I guess I would lean more towards the outside playground equipment. But again, I think that it's about trying to layer in some mitigation strategies within that. I defer to Colleen.
I think that's very helpful, and that's my thought process as well, although I appreciate the Swiss cheese sort of visual there. It does seem like that's what the teachers are trying to do. They're just looking for more slice options.
Before we let Colleen weigh in on this too, I might give a little bit of background there that, so to date, I think we've had 70 students who have tested positive. I don't have a percentage to give you an exact number of how many of those transmissions have happened outside of school, but I'm going to tell you we believe it to be probably in the 80 to 90% range. So bringing this recommendation to you, you know, we've said from the beginning that we wanted to base our decisions on data and evidence. And so there's kind of 2 competing principles here tonight. One is this idea that Dr. Burns is articulating well, that we need to be as careful as we can. So we're talking about modifying a plan with several different levels. And what level we're at is one of the ways that we will ultimately try to mitigate that risk, right? But we're trying to create levels that are consistent across grade levels, in schools, in how we're kind of approaching the strategies that we're trying to approach this with. So I guess my point here is that the recommendation comes from the effort to get consistent, and it's also consistent with the data that we've collected that we haven't had a lot of school transmissions. But lastly, we will continue to monitor. If the board approves this and we start tracking back transmissions related to playground equipment, then we'll take action based on that. Obviously, we haven't had any of that yet because we haven't been using the playground equipment. So, so we kind of don't necessarily really know. But the other part that I think is so critical, and that is, and Colleen and I certainly do not have the standing to probably even comment on their expertise, but it appears to us that the spread is happening much outside of school, with staff and with students. And we're trying to make that plea to our community, that as a community, we are so proud of the 8 weeks we have been able to have kids at school. Staff have been dedicated and have worked incredibly hard to make that happen. But if this spread continues to grow like it has been over the last 3 weeks, there's a limit to how much longer we're going to be able to do that and keep a face-to-face model for schools. So, and our way to mitigate that would be our level 5, which is a hybrid approach, or level 6, which is a fully remote approach, both of which those will have significant impacts on our community, because we'll have parents who now will have young children who will be at home at least part of the time, that will require supervision, which could impact people being able to go to work. It could impact, so that we certainly understand that those ripples are huge, but we're trying to balance that with how long does this go before it gets out of control, and we have bigger implications in our community. So, so I greatly appreciate the perspective, but we're still trying to put this in the levels that we can use. You know, we added level 3-5 a few meetings ago in an effort to help, and we got to use it for 1 day because our numbers were growing. Now, had our numbers been holding steady or going down, we probably would have got to use that a lot more. There will come a day again, I believe, where we will get to use it, but not right now. So part of your task tonight is balancing, you know, how do you still create this structure, maintain this structure that has levels that can be used when appropriate, but also raise the community's awareness that this, then we are going to have to go to more restrictive levels as a school system in order to keep our students and our staff safe.
And along those lines too, I think the vision team received some information, but just from the standpoint of staffing our district, and the comments you just made, we have hundreds, several hundred employees, teachers and others who have kids at school.
Correct.
And so that level 5 is a ripple effect, both in district operations as well as in the community. So.
Correct. Colleen, I didn't mean to preempt your comments.
I mean, everyone has pretty much summed this up. I do believe that there is evidence that does support, most concerning is transmission from host to host. But as we all know, kids are pretty germy, and they don't have the greatest hygienic practices. So yes, if they are all sharing equipment and on the playground together, it's going to definitely take hygiene practices, pre and post equipment and playground use to help mitigate any potential spread through those surfaces. And yes, Dr. Carlin is correct. Most of the cases that we have seen have been outside exposures, most often other household positives where that has spread. So it's been pretty easy to kind of find out where that source is happening in households. Of course, you're a little bit closer and more comfortable with your family and not wearing a mask at home, and you know that's all to be expected. But that's yes, where a lot of that spread is occurring. And then where those adults are getting it, that's kind of a whole other conversation.
Well, I know I, for one, really appreciate the report, and it is very concerning. I talked to one gentleman back east who journeyed out for business across southwest Kansas And he said once he left Manhattan, he never saw any masks used again in his rest stops or I'm not sure where all he went, but sort of the point there is, I think there is a certain sense of, boy, people are done with this thing. But obviously from what we're hearing, this is not the time. I mean, we sort of need to invigorate ourselves as a community, just recognizing the threat and then of course the impact to our caregivers and hospitals. That sort of sets an interesting light on what we're trying to do in the district with these couple of adjustments. And on one hand, it's such a weighing of the preponderances of the business that we're about as USD-457 and the business that we're about in the community, as a part of the community, and certainly keeping everybody safe. I really, other than that, it's like I want to really rely on the recommendations that have come up through the schools and their frontline efforts to put the slices of cheese, so to speak, in trying to keep kids safe, and the steps to sanitize and wash and distance and plexiglass and not cross classroom boundaries even as a potential transmission source. There are things happening at home, but here they are with us, and we're going to keep them safe while they're here. We do want to function on the social emotional side of things, and it seems like that's what these two things particularly are trying to get at, if not for consistency in our plan, then for at least that. And I want to make some motions, but I don't want to cut off the conversation.
Dana, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I have some questions, first off, because I'm having a hard time, or I will have a hard time voting on this one. I kind of don't understand the, reasoning, maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, behind the decision on level. Because I'm wondering what the positivity rate was when we went full remote last year compared to what it is now.
Well, last year it was an order from the governor.
Do we have any data on what the positivity rate was?
Yeah, I can tell you. Or go ahead, Colleen.
Dana, if I recall correctly, in mid-May, our highest percentage that we got up to was 62%. But we were pretty level at around 20%, and then pretty quickly jumped to 40 and then 60, and that was all within about 4 weeks. We were receiving anywhere between 40 and our highest day was 86 positives in one day. Currently, we are receiving about 50 positives each day. So we are on potentially the cusp of our highest community spread and highest number of cases. Our trends are showing that we are very quickly going to get there to the height of our positivity rate here in Garden City.
So when you guys are collaborating and talking about what level we should be, guess I'm not understanding how that decision was made, especially for this week, because it seems like as the numbers keep raising, and then I'm not sure if this is still good data, but if KSDE recommends that any community with a positivity rate of 50% or higher should be fully remote, I guess I want a little bit more understanding of how we determine the level this week, And that way I can kind of maybe have some logic to changes being made to the plan.
So I can probably help with that a little bit. We don't use the gating criteria that KSD put out as a sample. I think, as a matter of fact, I think probably Dr. Burns might have been one of the people in the state that started that conversation about having a gating criteria, and Dr. Burns and Colleen have been working on a gating criteria for our situation, I think, since early summer. So our gating criteria looks a little different than what the state put out as a sample. We have, I believe, 6 indicators that we look at as part of that, and that is some of the data that informs our decision about each level. This week we had, I believe, 4 flags that were indicated on our gating criteria, which would suggest to us level 4. It's not an automatic. Again, that's just data that informs our decision. And the 4 flags that were triggered, and Colleen, you might have them in front of you, so I'm gonna let you tell us.
Increase in new cases, cases that are not in congregate settings. So this would be, say if you had an outbreak in a long-term care facility or jail, it's a trigger to basically help protect the school district, to not have, to not be basically penalized by any increase in cases or outbreaks within those settings. ICU beds, which is triggered if we have 80% of the 8 ICU beds occupied. Our ICU has been full for several weeks. And then percent positivity, that indicator is flagged for any percent positivity rate above 25%. So with the 31% during that period of the 12th through the 16th, that triggered that flag.
So, and Dana, the prior week, I think we had 4 flags that week as well, but they were different flags. We had a flag for the hospitalizations. I think the hospitalizations were running a little higher the week before, and we had a flag for the outbreak that we had at 457 because of the situation at Jenny Parker. We also look at our student attendance and our staff attendance, and our staff positives have been going up over the last 3 weeks, but they kind of leveled off this week, actually, or this past week, actually went down 1, but I would say that was more leveling off. Our student positives have been considerably lower, and they actually ticked up a little bit last week. So in looking at our data, there was kind of a mix of data. We saw a little bit of a kind of a plateau, and we elected to remain at level 4 for this week and watch the trends in the data further. I've sent a letter out to all of our families. I've talked to staff, alerting them that if these numbers continue to increase, then we will likely go to our hybrid level, which again will be a step to kind of mitigate the growth that we're seeing. We are seeing some transmission in school, but we have 70 students right now who have been positive out of about 7,300. And that's in 8 weeks of school. So I don't think any of us went into this with the idea that we would have no cases. But the question becomes, you know, at what point do you ramp up and put in more restrictions, more efforts to mitigate the situation? We have 87, I believe, positives with staff out of about 1,330. And again, the vast majority of those have been transmissions that did not happen at school, that happened outside of school. However, even with that said, you know, we're not an island, so if the numbers are large in the community, they're gonna have an impact in our school system. So even though wearing masks and our plexiglass shields and the other mitigation steps we're taking seem to be, our evidence would suggest that they are somewhat effective in preventing the transmission at school. If the transmission is rampant out in the community, there will come a point.
Dr. Carlin,
Yes, ma'am?
hold on, I'm sorry, the mics pick up Laura and Alex,
Sorry.
so when they're talking, it's a jumble. Sorry.
Sorry. So,
Could you repeat, like, maybe just a couple minutes?
okay, so, so even though maybe we don't have a lot of evidence of transmission at school, our evidence suggests that the steps we're taking are somewhat effective, are probably very effective at reducing the transmission. If the transmission is running rampant in the community and the numbers get large there, we're not an island, so that is gonna have an impact on the cases that we have at school. So I think the point I really hope our community will understand is if we want to keep kids in school, face to face, if we don't want to go to level 5 or level 6, we are all gonna have to work on this together. We are all gonna have to make some adjustments and some sacrifices, because again, I think you're hearing from our medical professionals in our county that if the numbers continue at the rates they're continuing, we cannot sustain that. And we will see our numbers in the school continue to move up, and we're gonna have to do something different. So the hope is they'll plateau and we can go down. That has a better chance to happen if we all make more efforts to wash hands, wear masks, distance. You know, we don't get together for the K-State KU game. We watch that one in our houses and give one another a hard time on Twitter or over the text or the phone. But again, those are choices people are gonna make, but those choices will impact whether or not, what school looks like in the next few weeks. That's my belief.
I can just about it to the specific criteria as I offered it. And I modeled it after models that came out of Ohio, after it. Colleen and I, we worked on it for quite a while and trying to collaborate. And trying to figure out, part of it was what metrics can you actually track? And what do you think that you have accurate data, collection systems, to make sure that the data that you're plugging into that criteria is accurate, okay? Part of what's not built in to that gating criteria is rate of change. And specifically because, I mean, not rate of change, a little bit, but there's not plateaus for different levels. So a 20% positivity rate, a 6% positivity rate, a 75% positivity rate is still just flat, okay? So some of that we need to, because we need to have some understanding of what that data really looks like based on how many people are being tested. If you have lower number of tests, then that's a little bit different interpretation. We're luckily still able to test a pretty large amount. For a while, people weren't seeking tests. We have more availability of tests now, and we can have more confidence in that data that we're plugging in. This positivity rate is as concerning as we feel it to be, as it's being borne out by now, the rate of illness, the rate of hospitalization. All those metrics are tracking together. We expect the hospitals to be busting at the same when we have this kind of positivity rate. That's correct. But the criteria doesn't speak to a degree of severity, I guess, within each individual metric. So maybe that's a little bit misleading when I'm saying, this is how severe I see what the situation is on the ground, and then say, well, exactly how many, we have only 4 things flagged. But I think within those 4 flags, there's a lot more severity than even previous.
But Linda, did I hear you say at the beginning that you don't recommend large groups, you're against the change on choir, concerts? I mean, you even mentioned like.
It's a higher risk activity. It is. I mean, you're spelling droplets. We can do masks and those kind of things. Dr. Carlin, spoke to is different. An outdoor concert is different. A very small group is a different risk situation than our traditional large Christmas concert, right? Obviously, that was a part of the recommendation of the vision group to meet those modifications. I guess as I say, we all need to start making some really hard decisions about whatever kind of risk we're willing to take, even if it's a smaller risk or relative less risk. How important is that risk in the whole scheme of things? And that's what you have to take into account, because there's nothing that I can say is absolutely a safe activity, other than sitting in a room by yourself. So everything is a degree of risk after that, and it's how much as leaders and as families and as teachers and community we're willing to take. But could a choir concert, of 5 people appropriately spaced, be a spreader event? It could. When we have plenty of hospital space and not too much spread, so the likelihood of those people coming in being an asymptomatic spreader is maybe less than it is now. Right now, kind of assume everybody around you has it. I mean, honestly, okay? That's where we're at. So when the degree of spread in the community is less, that's a lesser risk activity. As we go through the winter, if that positivity rate keeps going up and people, there's more chance of more people in that room generating more droplets, whatever, your risk goes up. It just does. And so trying to quantify that into a hard-baked, gating criteria is difficult. And yet you can see it. You can see it on the ground. So can we do virtual choir concerts? Is there some other way that we can achieve some of the things that we want to do without people being in the same room together? Is what I'm suggesting.
So my last question was, thank you, Lindsay. My last question was there somebody from the health department on the select committee?
Yeah, I don't know if Colleen was at the meeting.
It's me. I've missed it.
Yeah, Colleen is on the committee, but she didn't attend the meeting on Friday. But we did talk to Colleen about these changes outside of the committee meeting. I guess the other thing that I would offer to you is, again, we started our activity seasons this fall knowing that there was probably different risks associated with different activities. We continue to monitor that. I believe we've had one issue that happened with volleyball where the evidence has shown us that there was spread that occurred outside at a private event that then I think we had a player and a coach who were, we believe, infected after that as a result of some of the kids that were positive. So we did have spread through the school there. We've had some other situations where I think we've had participants like on maybe middle school cross country that have been positive, but because the timing, they were infected originally, I think, away from school, and so they were basically solo cases where we didn't have other kids who were on the team who tested positive. But we continue to monitor those things, looking for trends with those activities that if we do find spread happening, then that will cause us to scrutinize whether or not those teams are quarantined, whether or not those groups continue to be able to function. And again, to this point, we've had very limited spread at school as a result of school or school events. Colleen, is that accurate?
Yes, I mean, from the evidence and the tracing that we've done, we don't see a lot of indicators to prove that the spread is happening widespread in the schools. So oftentimes if we are tracing it outside of the schools or to other exposures, that's data that we use to inform these decisions as well.
But I think maybe Dana, going to your, I don't wanna put words in your mouth here, but maybe going to what I'm hearing your concern being, to me, it's if our numbers in the community continue up, then it's not so much what's in level 4 or level 3, but it's that we will then be moving to level 5 or level 6, where we are mitigating these things, because if we get to level 6, we won't be having any activities. That's what level 6 requires in our plan. So that's the most extreme we can do to keep our students and staff safe, but also to play our role in mitigating that spread. My hope is that our community will be able to step up, and it won't require that, but we will make that decision based on what the data is telling us. And right now, we're close to the borderline here of moving into one of those more restrictive levels.
Mrs. Hannigan, I should say to the board, I wasn't on the school committee, not because my presence is necessary, it's not. I'm coming to you tonight, you know, the committees have done their job. They have looked at the metrics, they have tried to weigh all the risks. I'm speaking from my perspective as a medical professional, in an advisory capacity is invited here. But really, my experience spans more than the public health department, and I'm trying to give analysis and advice, you know, certainly in the role as the medical director for Prince County, but also as a practicing physician, also someone experiencing this, you know, in a different way, in a different environment, and as a part of other collaborative groups that are seeing the same trends, the same issues in their communities. I'm trying to bring, you know, all of that to you. And so it's not, I don't mean to be contradicting the recommendations that have been made, I'm just adding mine to it and take it for what well.
Jennifer, do you have any comments or questions? Jennifer, I'm sorry, I can barely hear you. Okay.
Jennifer, it was better when you leaned forward.
Okay.
You can put it on the chat.
We can't do the chat because of open meetings.
I don't care.
Alex, do you?
Yeah, I appreciate everybody's comments so far. When I ask this question, Bonnie, I'm not trying to nail it down to one specific age group, but can you give us, with the numbers that are at now, what our specific age groups are? Are they, I know we're seeing some positive cases in the school district. Are they all high school? Are they grade school? Do we know that yet?
Student-wise, and this trend has kind of been consistent across the state. It seems to, yes, be older age, so middle school, high school, and then of course your adults, teachers. Our highest adult age range is the 20 to 34 age group, is probably our highest risk.
And so we talked about, I think Dr. Burns talked about German kids. We talked about German kids going and touching the playground equipment or anything in the facility as well. And cross transmission, that kid takes that German stuff, his hands home, and then possible transmission there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, I like the fact that this is a living document, but personally, as far as Wallace Electric, we've had a couple cases come in, and we're through the construction industry, we're starting to see some more cases, and it's affecting us going out and doing our job, or other people coming out and doing the job. And some of the facilities we work in, we can't work in that facility. One of them is a medical facility. We have a tough time going in there and working because of the quarantine. all the other people I talk to, this is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Am I gloom and doom? No. I want to go to work. All my guys want to go to work. But in the current status, we can't. We have to quarantine. I will have a hard time voting yes for this level unless there's maybe a week or two time period to figure out what's going to happen next. You're talking about the numbers increasing faster and faster, more cases. I know it's not affecting our schools as much, but it does affect our teachers, our staff. We have a hard time staffing it with subs when our regular teachers are home sick with this. So right now I just have a tough time tonight as far as playground equipment. The choir, I need to think about that a couple more minutes to move forward, but I'm also doing with Dr. Burns's comments to make that decision. So, if we had a couple more weeks or another week, I know we don't meet but every 2 weeks, but we had another week to kind of see what the numbers are going to be, I'd probably feel a little bit more comfortable. But right now, you're asking for community help. I think we can also help ourselves and try to mitigate as much as possible. I do understand the mental well-being of kids. They've got to get out there and play. They've got to have some face-to-face, especially with the mask. They got to play. They got to stretch their legs. They got to do stuff. It's also great for the teachers to get out and about in that playground area. But at the same time, I don't want to look back and go, dang it, why? Why did we do that? So, thank you.
Mark, do you have any questions, other comments?
A couple of comments, I guess. First of all, clarification. One of these was really putting consistency, not that that changes anything about, and I don't disagree with my fellow board members' comments you just made, but one of these was trying to be consistent in the spirit of the language for both middle school as well as lower grades and high school. Consistency through as far as I'm assuming it's the concerts.
Right, so the high school's plan treats concerts similar to activities at level 4, but our overarching levels say no concerts at level 4. So we've kind of got a disparity there in, which section should trump the other section.
And so in light of that, and also a lot of compliments I heard from the recent production of the high school and what we're doing even with athletic events where it's not 50%, it's basically 35%. So even more spacing. And we've talked already about the discomfort of the mask police. How you do that at these events, and yet staff seem to be committed because that's our plan. And I know how committed the teachers are. So again, I guess I feel like I've got a level of comfort, even with the deep feelings of concern for the comments made tonight, for the community. I personally just throw the caveat out there, even though I know they're doing it, that sort of renewed, just the leadership we want to provide to the community is the leadership we want to practice in the schools. And I think we can do that and yet still meet the needs of the kids that our teams are observing with some very practical questions. Can't we still have a concert if we find the right large venue and stay socially distanced? That's an opportunity to reinvigorate the education in the community by virtue of that event. Now, I can appreciate, aren't there other ways of doing it? Of course there are. But if we put a motion on the table as recommended to the board, and it fails, it fails. But if it passes, I just feel like as long as, my comment is, as long as we continue the good work I know our staff and teachers are doing to plug those holes or prevent those transmissions as we've talked about, I think there's still opportunity for tweaking here And we may only end up doing it like we did before with 3.5 for a couple more days, and then we move on. But I think we're trying to be responsive to both things, the community and the school district. And the community can learn from the school district. And if we do it right, then we teach not only our kids, but our community. And so I have a level of comfort with some of these tweaks.
My thing with the concerts, I mean, and I thought I knew for sure what I wanted to do with the concerts coming in, and then I listened to Dr. Burns, and sorry, I lost my page, and you know, I understand what she's saying, but I'm also seeing this as two issues too. I'm seeing what she's saying as maybe we shouldn't be at level 4 right now. Maybe we should be at level 5 right now. And I looked at the gating criteria that we have, and that was sent out by email to district-wide, so hopefully it's not secret or anything, but, and reviewed that, because that was developed back in August, and looked at that to see, because I heard a lot of people say, how can we be at level 4 this week? And I'm like, well, what was our gating criteria? Where should we be at? When that decision came out on Friday. And reviewed it again to see, okay, what are our indicators? Where are we at? I mean, so I see this as two different issues. I see this as trying to make things consistent, but then I'm also seeing maybe we should tweak it some more so that maybe this is something that we're looking at, just like Coach Tone or Mr. Tone looks at on a weekly basis to see, okay, what activities do we have going on for the week, and which ones get to happen and which ones don't. But that's something for the committee to maybe look at, and not for this board to be looking at. But maybe that's a tweak that we have to look at in the future, or the select committee needs to look at in the future. Does the football game happen? Does the volleyball game get to happen? Does this concert get to happen? I don't know, because if the concerts and show choir wants to get treated the same way as football gets treated, as I got in an email last week, maybe that's the category they need to get put on. Maybe we need to take it out of the school part and put it under activities instead, and have it treated that way. And I know he's on Zoom and he's probably shooting daggers at me if he could be looking at me right now. And so we analyze it more like that, but maybe that's something to be considered at a later time. But if we can have a football game, I think we should be able to have a concert. Heck, technically speaking, I was at a concert Friday night. They did a heck of a job. It was cold. That's the only thing I went for really Friday night, was the halftime show. But we had a band concert. I mean, if they can play during a football game, I guess the question is, why can't they play outside? You know, just to play outside. Although I wouldn't recommend it in that cold.
Madam President, may I attempt to answer that, and Drew can jump in also?
Okay.
This is Glenda.
Sure.
So that is part of the discrepancy, exactly what you're talking about. The high school plan does include music activities as part of high school activities. They are sanctioned under TASHA.
Right.
And they are charged. That's why in the high school plan, they can actually have a music activity at level 4. but in our classroom plan, it says no concert. So that is part of the discrepancy. They are treated exactly like the athletic teams. It's on the high school chart. So that is already on there, but it doesn't match our classroom level.
Right, but show choir and some of the other things aren't. So that's where I'm kind of going with this though. So that's why,
No,
no? You put your hand up, sorry.
no, that's actually not true. Show choir can have concerts. Where it came into an issue was, they wanted to have the show choir concert down at the band shell. We don't have any jurisdiction over that. We don't know how it's cleaned. We don't know who's doing the bathrooms. They were offered the stadium or anywhere, inside our district facilities and chose not to use those.
Oh,
So
okay.
they are allowed to have that one
Oh, okay.
under our 712 plan.
Yes and no, because there's still a discrepancy in our plan. One section says no concerts, and one section allows it. So, and that's what we're asking you to clarify tonight.
Okay. So, for level 4, so I'm still still trying to get there. If football can play, I think we should be able to have a concert. But my issue is, should we have been at level 5? So, I think that's where I'm going with what Dr. Burns was saying. So I'm seeing it as two different issues
Exactly.
with regard to that as to overall community. So, and I'm not trying to second guess what Dr. Carlin's decision was on Friday. He was talking to everybody and making that decision. He was seeing everything on Friday and made that call. Just like he made the call today, and I'm sure there's some people wanting to know why he didn't call a snow day or ice day. He can't please everyone. I'm sure there's some people who probably was trying to slip him a 50 to call it a snow day today. That was his call. I think Mr. Hogan was giving you a thumbs up to try to give you $50. So, he's the one that we've given the authority to make that decision for. So, overall, I'm fine making this modification for level 4 because it does fix that inconsistency between the two things. And it's up to Dr. Carlin to make the decision as to which level overall we should be at. I don't know if this will get used this week. We gave him 3.5 and he got to use it for a day. So.
That was my comment earlier.
Right.
Okay.
So maybe we don't want to give it to him, that way he can be at level 4 next week. It seems like every time we give him a little bit of discretion, he doesn't get to use it.
Can I ask another question? So, on the playground concerts, even the after-school clubs, who makes that determination? Is it once a week, or are we doing it, is it daily, is it up to the building administrator, is it 100% up to you and the team?
So we meet on Fridays with the health department, we meet with Holcomb, we meet with the Catholic schools, all in that meeting. Colleen reviews the data from the community, and we're generally looking at data that's a week old because they want to look at a complete data set, and because they have lag in reporting and testing. If we looked at this week's data, it would always be incomplete data. We share information about, and because we meet daily and review what, at the end of every day, and we review what happened in the district that particular day. And then we share any highlights from that at that meeting with the group. And then we jointly make a decision, as with the health department and us, as to what level makes sense. We have the final say, I guess, but typically we have a consensus on what level makes sense. Then Holcomb makes a determination for what level they'll be at. Again, we're all in the same county, but their situation sometimes looks a little different than ours. and then a representative from the Catholic schools sets their level. And we've used that process for 8 weeks now, 9 weeks, I guess, because we're into our 9th week. And again, as I shared with you and tried to share with the community here over the last couple of weeks, we are getting close to moving to level 5 based on the evidence and the data. And again, I think I agree with Laura in her comment that would be what would move us to more mitigation, because concerts don't happen at level 5. Our other activities happen, but they happen without a crowd. Well, a concert without a crowd is, I guess, a rehearsal. But I do believe that there's still a lot of merit in how the plan works, and as she mentioned, there's people that think we should be nowhere near going to level 5, and there's people that think we should have been there 2 weeks ago. And but we are trying to base our decisions on the evidence in the community. And right now, we've had a couple of weeks of pretty dramatic increases. If those continue, then I think our consensus will be that we need to go to a more restrictive level, which will be very inconvenient for people in this community.
And in all fairness to Dr. Carlin, he asked me to weigh in, and I was garbed head to toe, and I declined. And now I'm literally Monday night quarterbacking here, but I appreciate the process. When we assigned that criteria or we tried to assign the gating criteria and match it up to the operational level plan, maybe it wasn't perfect, assessing risk. And I guess what I would ask is, maybe it's time to tweak up and be more conservative in some of those operations than we originally laid out versus, I appreciate consistency, but maybe it's being more aggressive in the level 4 to try and mitigate even more so than we lined out originally. That's a hard thing to do at this juncture when it has been, used for so long now and working. But I guess maybe for me, I guess I'd like to see level 4 more conservative, because that's where we're gonna stay too. I know it's really hard for me to say those kind of things and to try to within the structure. Just trying to be honest.
So maybe what I'm hearing is maybe creating a 4.5. So we're not at a hybrid, but still keeping people in person, but something else.
So I would suggest if the board doesn't, if any of these don't pass tonight, that we take this back and work through the structures that we have, the select team, the principals. I would really caution you about trying to make edits here at the board table tonight. In other districts where that's happened, that doesn't work well. And we have a lot of people who have invested a lot of time in this, and we don't want to eliminate them from the process.
I completely concur.
And expertise. I mean, we have, the people that are on that group represent parents, teachers, administrators,
I'm not suggesting that we do that here at the board table. What I'm suggesting is making a recommendation that the committee look at that, but that we take up the recommendations from the committee tonight. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just saying, based off of what Dr. Burns said, maybe they can look at that, but that we take up their recommendations tonight still. If that's the pleasure of the board. I don't know, just an idea.
Madam President, I move that we approve the change in the language on the playground in the district COVID response plan, just to get something on the table.
There's a motion to approve the recommended language, which is to make that the playground will be available on a classroom rotation basis with no yellow
Second.
seconded by Jennifer. Discussion?
If I could just jump in on the discussion side, I am saying that we're recognizing our earlier conversation and with the fervent expectation that the teachers continue their vigilance in their routines for sterilizing hands, washing hands, sterilizing the surfaces, and continuing to do everything they can to keep the kids safe while still being able to, I mean, not on a day like today, but when they can access the playground equipment. So, with that comment.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, so, looking here, the recommended language, level 4, playground will be available on a classroom rotation basis. No yellow status with student positives on the playground, so if the classroom, not just a student, but the whole classroom, if it's in yellow status, they're not able to go out there and play on that equipment.
Right, so the classroom goes yellow if there's one positive kid in the class during the quarantine period.
Do we know how many elementary classes have had to go through the yellow status? as of today?
Glenda, how many elementary classrooms have had to be yellow?
We don't have very many that have had to be yellow because of students, and that is the difference in this one, because it does say student positive. We've had yellow classrooms because the teacher has been positive, but very few because the student has been positive.
And we've had, according to as of last Friday, I don't have today's numbers in here, but we've had 23 kids grades K through 6, and I think 8 of those, 5th and 6th grade, that have been positive the entire year. So we have 15 in our K4 buildings so far in the first 8 weeks of school, and students that have tested positive.
So will your team, if this is to be approved, will your team, will it be by school basis at that time? Or is this gonna be kind of a blanket, approval, but back to, facility?
So we set a base level, so this week the base level was 4, and schools can be higher than that, but not lower. Level 4. So, you know, when Jenny Barker was in remote, they would have been at level 6, everybody else was at level 4. This would allow any of those schools then at level 4, instead of closing the playground completely, they could rotate their classes onto the playground equipment as long as they didn't have a student positive. But they would do a rotation, so they're not just all in there together.
Sure.
So it's kind of addressing the cohort concept.
How are we treating lunch as elementary schools when we have so many kids in that? I mean, are they all congregating and they keep distance and that, as far as lunch period? What do you want to really do?
They eat in classroom cohorts together, and then they socially distance at the table or in the classroom. They eat in the classroom if they're a yellow classroom.
But if they're not in the yellow classroom, they still eat in the classroom?
They
Period, but they do socially distance and they eat in assigned seats, so the whole class sits together as a unit in one section of the cafeteria. Again, it allows us to help with contact tracing. If the health department calls us and says, we need to know who's sat next to little Johnny, we can say, well, at lunch, they have assigned seats, so this is who he sits next to, and in the classroom, this is who he sits next to. So we can provide that information for them. So all of our seats are assigned seats, whether it's lunch or in the classroom.
And they do spread out, it's not like typical cafeteria where everybody's shoulder to shoulder.
But in the playground setting, I mean, we're not able to social distance. I mean, kids are gonna be kids and group together. Kids do.
Yeah, I think the teachers will make an effort, but it's no different than them just being outside and they throw a soccer ball out and there's gonna be times where kids are closer together.
It's no different than college, or the high school, college,
Dana, any questions,
believe that these changes are consistent with the rest of the plan. I guess where I was trying to go with my earlier questions was more so, an understanding of the levels in general. So the changes, I really do feel that they're consistent with level 4 with the rest of the district. I guess, I'm hoping that when I see the dramatic changes in positivity rates, of course, I think being conservative is the better way to go. So for me, when I have other people asking questions or, presenting, information, and we have an opportunity to have the health department here, I want those to be answered, so.
Jennifer, anything on this motion?
No,
Anything else? Stephanie, you want to call roll? Laura? Aye. Dana?
I
Mark?
Aye.
Jennifer?
aye.
Alex?
And again, to move along, if it pleases the chairwoman. Madam President, I move that we approve the change in the language for the concerts, to make those criteria consistent, across the COVID response plan.
So that concerts may be held with 35, at level 4, concerts may be held with 35% location capacity with required masks and social distancing.
Yep, that's all what we discussed and what's been provided. Again, assuming they can find the right venue and et cetera, that's probably for discussion, but yes, that's my motion.
Is there a second? I'm sorry, was that you, Jennifer?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion? Roll call? Laura? Aye. Dana?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Alex?
Well, then to continue, I guess we've gotten farther than I expected there. Madam President, I move that we approve the change to the before and after school clubs in the district COVID response plan.
So level 4 after school academic focused activities will be allowed with social distancing and masks required.
Yeah, that's the big, strong monster caveat there.
That's okay. Is there a second? I'll second.
Second.
Oh, Jennifer. Thank you. Any discussion? Edith Sharman has a sign choir. Edith Sharman. Yeah.
So, sign, choir, except for the instructors not throwing a lot of particles out?
Hopefully
Or
not.
probably, that's one of those, probably safer?
Well, they do sing and sign, so
Oh,
they probably will need to wear masks when they're singing.
yeah, beg your pardon. Well, the others that are singing would be wearing masks too. So, all of the caveats are there under the plan. We just want to reinforce it. And we, again, with your considerations, we may not stay at level 4 very long. I'm not sure what I think about level 4.5, but certainly we're going to come back to level 4 if we have to leave it. And I think this is just sort of cleanup for the most part for level 4. And I do firmly believe that there is a role in instructing the families and the community on the way to do this thing of social distancing and protecting each other. that's an appropriate part of this. What's on the table here is, as we've discussed, is really not dealing with the big issue that we've heard about in the direction of our communities, but it's more specific to the recommendations that have come up through the process on tweaks to the plans.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, what's the name of the club that goes on after school? I can't,
Well, we have the Engage After School program, that was ARR, and so, and again, that's where the inconsistency comes, that we allow, but like our robotics groups that are also academic, the sign choir that has, I mean, there's an academic component to that too, and those we don't allow, the way the plan's written right now.
And the Engage is in most of the elementary schools now.
It's in all the elementary schools now, correct, Glenda?
Thumbs up.
Correct. So we had a second on that, right? Any other discussion? Roll call. Laura? Aye. Dana?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jennifer?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Well, I hope you get to use these, Dr. Carlin. But I think Dr. Burns made some really valid points that, and Colin as well, that if things don't change, and I know we're looking at a lag, so it may not be good next week, but, or at least Friday's information that you have, so,
Well, Madam President, it's very sobering
yes.
conversations we've had tonight.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank Colleen and Dr. Burns for coming tonight, sharing the information, and again, for all the work that they've done with us. Dr. Burns mentioned that, you know, we've had 8 weeks of school, which is better than probably most school districts have had. And again, I think our staff wants kids back in school, but we also have to take into account the bigger picture here. And safety is a critical component of this, and this is one of those things, if we all work together on this, we have a much better chance to keep that going than if people in our community ignore this, because if the trend continues, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but what I've heard them say is we will not be able to sustain that with our medical system. And that's not satisfactory, so.
Can I ask a off-topic question, but on topic? Between Colleen and Dr. Burns, how do you feel, what's your opinion when you hear people out in the community, whether Wichita, here, wherever in the world, when they compare this virus to the common cold or flu?
Inaccurate, flat out inaccurate. Death rate, mortality rate is much higher with this. The transmission is much higher with this. It's not comparable, other than they're both viruses.
Thank you.
Mark?
I think we said this before when we deliberated at length about the original plan. But certainly this is a partnership with the community, as we keep talking about tonight. And so I guess I want to wonder whether the staff could think in terms of additional communication as a result of our discussions tonight, just reminding the community how what the rates are and where we may be headed if we can't turn this thing around. And we can't as a district, but we may be able to as a community. And that's the kind of message that seems like appropriate at this time. Maybe too late, but just as an encouragement to the community, and to inform them we're trying to do everything we can at USD-457.
Good suggestion.
Well, thank you both again for coming and spending so much of your evening with us. We really appreciate it. I know the information that you've given us has not fallen on deaf ears. I think we all took it in very seriously and gave it a lot of consideration. And Friday, it'll be given a lot of consideration as well. And we really appreciate it. And I know we really appreciate the partnership that we have with you, so thank you very much.
Amen.
Really appreciate it. I mean, I know I keep saying that, but thank you so much for everything that you do for us.
Thank you. It's been great to work with the school district and wonderful to collaborate in this way and serve our community. So we want to see, kids stay in school as long as possible, and so trying to work as hard as we can to make sure that follows through. So
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Hey, and one last piece of collaboration. Cole, we had as young kids at home, and so when we talked about this, Superintendent Myers from Holcomb was willing to go and babysit her kids. Did he follow through with that?
So I have a different Scott at home, but sure.
Oh,
My husband's name is Scott, so you
oh,
know.
okay. So we got Scott Myers
Yes.
off the hook. Okay, all right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you, Dr. Burns.
Thanks.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to get to be part of this group and work with all of you. And I appreciate all of your work and all the efforts across the district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that takes us to board open discussion. Jennifer, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Dana? Mark?
No.
Alex?
I just want to let everybody know I appreciate everybody's patience with me and answering all my questions, and the team, all the hard work, and Dr. Carlin getting the information to us. It's been a lot of information over the last 8 months. Sometimes you don't know if you're coming or going, if you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong. That can change at the drop of a hat, coming from the government, coming from the county, but I appreciate you giving me the information to make a cautious decision tonight on those 2 or 3 topics. And knowing that it's a living document and staying consistent with the plan that I voted on earlier in the past board meetings helped me make my decision. But I hope we can still, with the community effort, like Mark was saying, everybody else saying, and our board effort and your team effort, that we can stay in communication, collaborative, and make the most up-to-date, cautious decision and not have too much of a lag. But I appreciate everybody's input tonight and helping me out, so thank you.
Just a couple of upcoming dates that I wanted to make sure, I know we're still meeting between now and then, hopefully in person still too, but hopefully this will be an in-person event. But Crystal Apple, November 19th, it is going to be a little bit different this year. Instead of a banquet, it's going to be an event at the auditorium at the high school, so it can be socially distanced. But I think what's going to end up happening is it's still going to be a really incredible event and something that the teachers I hope will really enjoy and like. But that's November 19th. And then I think it's the 2nd and the 3rd of December is going to be the KASP conference, and that's going to be virtual. I'm just going to double check the dates. Move my calendar on my thing. The 4th and the 5th, excuse me. So that's going to be a virtual event, so you can kind of check in on things as you have time. There's still going to be some parts that are going to be live for you to be able to still network and things as well. So if you have some time, and then I know Dr. Carlin mentioned something about if you're interested in being the the delegate or the alternate delegate, because we will be voting on the president-elect and then some modifications to the Constitution. And then one thing I wanted to mention as well, we did a memorandum of understanding with a bunch of different agencies at one point as a result of Senate Bill 367. We may have to do that again. They're looking at changing that because it was a one-time deal, and people realized that superintendents change, and sheriffs change, and chiefs of police change. Who knew? So, they may be modifying that, so you might want to be on the lookout for legislation on that. So, something to just keep on your radar. I got reappointed by the Chief Justice to that committee, so, a couple of months ago. I started my 3-year term again on that, so, I'll be doing that for another 3 years. So, thank you. So, if I hear anything more on the education side, I'll pass that along. So, I'm the juvenile defense attorney representative, but every once in a while I put on my other hat too. So, so I thought you should know, we talked about that. With that, Dr. Carlin, do you have anything?
No, again, just to put out there how pleased I am that we've been able to have 8 pretty good weeks of school. Great effort by our staff and our community. We really need their help right now because we all want to keep kids in school, but we have to do that in a way that keeps everybody safe. And with the surge we're seeing in our community, it's going to require some attention. So I appreciate all the support. So thank you.
The next meeting of the Board of Education will take place on Monday, November 9th, 2020 at 6 p.m. The board meeting room at the Educational Support Center. We do have the need for a couple of executive sessions. How long for the first one?
Probably
15 minutes. Okay. Jennifer and Dana, you should have a link for another Zoom to go into.
Madam President, I move we go into executive session for 15 minutes to discuss the real estate pursuant to the exception for preliminary discussion of the acquisition of real property in Tacoma, beginning at 9:10, and the open meeting will resume in the board meeting room at 9:25.
Say 9:12, that way they can log out and all that.
9:12 and 9:27. I would like to invite Dr. Carter KJ Nolan to join us in this executive session.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Stephanie, you want to call the roll? Laura? Aye. Dana?
Aye.
Barb?
Aye.
Jennifer? And you should be logged off.
Still got 4.
Okay. Alex?
Good. Good job. Good job.
Okay, we're in executive session, and Jennifer will not be able to attend the executive